How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, Seth Julian. Welcome you to tonight's session where we're going to talk about green energy, real or hype. The long backgrounder. You're not going to need any pencils, any calculators. It's a background piece, macro piece. We will talk about opportunities, of course, specific stocks and what have you. But this is important in terms of trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. There's just so much nonsense and noise about ESG is what it's referred to as environmental, social, and governance. This is the catch-all phrase for modern, environmentally aware capitalism that seeks to profit without harming Mother Earth. Now, that in itself is a great idea. And, oh, I'm sorry, ladies. Don't I just get carried away before I even started? Could you let me know in the question and answer chat area if you can hear my voice, see the opening slide? As I see my system said, but I always like to get a little confirmation from the audience. We have a nice number of people in the room tonight. Just and respond in the question. Just say hello. Tell me. Just say hello. It'll tell me who you are, and just make some indication that I'm not broadcasting into nowhere land. No, all my systems indicate all systems are go, but nobody's responding. So I'm concerned. That's always a concern. You know what I mean? Anybody? Oh, here we go. Hi, Osman. Good to see you. Thank you very much, sir. That'll do for all of us. Great. All right. So, yes, I got ahead of myself. My name is Seth Julian. I'm Chief Global Strategist here at Alvexo. Although my tenure is coming to an end, the end of this month will be my last broadcast for the Alvexo Radio Network. But in the meantime, I'm still, regardless, 65 years old. I've been trading in the capital markets now for 52 years, and I have degrees in political economy, international trade and economics, and business and finance. Excuse me. I started my career on Wall Street in the early 80s at an outfit called Bankers Trust Company, and have since been associated with international brokerage. This is the third international brokerage I've been associated with. And here we are. So let's get right down to business. So I do ask one thing. If you have any questions, please ask them in real time. It creates a dialogue and it makes it more interesting for all of us. Now then, let me just see. Yeah, okay. So most of this, I'm just going to read through this, but feel free to interrupt and ask anything you want, anytime you want. Be a discussion more interesting. Now, there's a great deal of noise surrounding the subject of green energy. Powering our society without burning fuels to do so is part of the ESG, environmental social governance revolution, so desired by today's investors and the world at large. And I don't mean to belittle it. I don't want to say it in a denisory way. I'm in favor of it. I wish the planet wasn't. Anyway, I'm in favor of it. It's a good thing. I don't want to, denigrate it. The problem, of course, is the gap between these desires and reality. The gap is so gaping that it even has a name of its own. It's called greenwashing. Now, the meaning is that by washing, and I mean that literally and figuratively, sometimes you see buses that they just paint green. Same diesel engine, same diesel fuel, but the bus is green, so you get the idea. Anyway, that by washing all manner of activity and investment in the color green, they magically become ESG compliant. Not surprisingly, this is a load. Now, mostly because there is no accepted standard for what qualifies as environmental. We all know that burning things for power is choking the earth and causing it to heat up, bringing all kinds of natural disasters for its inhabitants. We also have some idea that in order to maintain our socioeconomic lifestyles, particularly for rich earthlings, we need to generate power that does not involve burning stuff. Okay, that's well and good, but what does this mean in actual practice? Herein lies the rub, as the bard said. The developed world's energy requirements to maintain its current levels are truly colossal. The world has evolved. Anybody ever been to the United States, by the way? Have you seen what these people drive? It's just incredible. Well, their energy consumption is remarkable, just for their profligacy. But that's another story. The world has evolved an enormous subsection of energy supply lines, production capacities, and exploration functions for hydrocarbons. These include coal, crude oil, natural gas. The reasons we use, and let me just to give you some example, kind of, we are now one of the most, the area that has the most potential that is still yet to be fully exploited. It's the Gulf of Mexico. Water is very deep out there. Sometimes it's 3,500 meters deep, and then they have to go another couple of miles under the earth, under the ocean, till they reach oil. But this fantastic amounts of oil, tremendous amounts. By the way, the problem, you should know this, it's not that we're running out of oil. That's nonsense. It's always been nonsense. The problem is we're never going to run out of oil. That's the real problem. But that's another story, actually. Yes, the reasons we use these fuel sources are that they are all incredibly abundant in the Earth's crust, relatively easy to extract, and pack a powerful amount of energy into each kilogram or cubic meter or barrel. The plants that convert these hydrocarbons are remarkably efficient and highly reliable. The fact that we power our entire society with these fuels, and barring the occasional energy crisis, for a relatively very low cost, is testimony to the ubiquitous and efficient application. Well and good, except it can't be sustained indefinitely. We're seeing it's over. But it's not just the unsustainability that is the rub. We all know the world is heating up with catastrophic consequences for our civilization. Anybody have any questions? Feel free, ladies and gentlemen. The rub is that we do not have a viable alternative to burning hydrocarbons and maintaining our current lifestyles. That's the rub. The alternatives are stark. Either we severely cut back on energy consumption, doing without the many benefits profligate energy use provides. And I'm not only talking about the giant pickup trucks for moms to get their kids from kindergarten in, but air conditioning. How's that? Air conditioning. More refrigeration, transport. I'm not talking about sending planes around the world. I'm talking about sending freight from the from the farm to the warehouse to the grocer, etc. Enable total replacement of hydrocarbon-based energy production with renewable sources. Either alternative has such enormous socioeconomic costs that realizing either is impossible. And therefore, and this is the real rub, we are going to continue to have to burn hydrocarbons for decades to come in order to facilitate the eventual transition to a carbon neutral existence. I want to repeat that. It's not necessary, it's not intuitive, but it's true. We're going to have to hydrocarbons for decades to come in order to facilitate the eventual transition of a carbon neutral existence. That's going to play very heavily into our strategy about how we can actually make money out of what's going on. So we ask the question, as many do and have, is green energy real, actual, genuinely realizable? Or is it extravagant, intensive and promotion? In other words, nonsensical hype. As for both choices. First, the hype. I want to start off talking about Michael Moore's, actually he only produced the documentary on green energy called Planet of the Humans. He didn't direct it. It was the job of somebody else. But he was the brains behind it, and it's got his imprimatur of really bold-faced answering and asking and answering his own questions. But nonetheless, he's always good. He's always provocative. You may not have to agree with him, but he's scathing in that movie about the nonsensical greenness of. Well, let me just read it. I don't care. Viewers of Michael Moore's documentary on green energy, Planet of the Humans, were exposed to some biting criticism of the green energy phenomenon and the people promoting it. The documentary featured all sorts of rebukes to the enterprise of replacing hydrocarbon combustion with renewable energy production. Claims like wind generators require so much steel and concrete in their bases, both of which materials are highly carbon intensive in their production, that's true, that we would be better off burning said energy source to generate electricity directly instead of creating the huge carbon footprint inherent in establishing the wind turbine. Similarly for solar, either photovoltaic or solar concentration, that's where the mirrors focus sunlight on towers or on vacuum tubes, etc. SV, the amount, photovoltaic or solar concentration, so the amount of CO2 produced making these renewable energy generators, glass, mirrors, steel, all that stuff, outweighs the benefits in reduced CO2 byproducts from the resultant green energy. That's largely the premise of Planet of the Humans. Now, unfortunately, there are grains of truth to these claims. Excuse me. However, since the documentary was these true grains have been significantly reduced to being near totally debunked. That's monumentally wrong. A 2017 study in Nature, Nature Energy, found that when accounting for manufacturing and construction, and this is 2017. This is 6 years. I think the movie was made 2011, 2012. 5-6 years after the movie comes out. The lifetime carbon footprints of solar, wind, and nuclear power are about 1/20th of those of coal and natural gas, even when the latter include expensive carbon capture and storage technology. So even if you capture and bury the carbon output of these carbon burn, combustion plants, is still 20 times bigger than solar and wind. The energy produced during the operation of a solar panel and wind turbine is 26 times in the case of solar and 44 times in the case of wind, greater than the energy needed to build and install them, respectively. Excuse me. There are many life cycle assessment studies arriving at similar. Now, I remember, very vividly, I was very involved in the financing of the early solar electric generating systems that were placed into the Mojave Desert. This was some financing work I did on Wall Street, selling bonds. Those original solar electric generating systems were essentially tax shelters. The Carter administration in the 1970s sought to encourage alternative energy production, not like we're trying to do. It's not unlike what we're trying to do today. And many wealthy people invested in the bonds that were going to be paid off from the cash flow paid by the electric utilities in California, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, in the case of the solar electric generating fields in the Mojave. They were going to go directly to the bond payments. It seemed very good for once. The Reagan administration removed those tax credits, and the electric generating fields fell into disrepair. And he shows that quite vividly. They are awful looking. Let me tell you, because they're enormous. We'll get to that in a moment. There are many life. Okay, focuses almost exclusively on this is getting back to more. He focuses almost exclusively on the imperfections of technologies like solar, wind turbines, biomass, and electric cars, without considering their ability to reduce carbon and other pollutants. And it's deeply flawed. It really is. The suggestions that because no source of energy is perfect, all are bad, implies that the very existence of human civilization is the problem, which I think might even be one of his points. I won't go that far. It's true that the carbon footprint of renewable energies is not zero, okay, but it's far lower than fossil fuel alternatives. Brazil cannot displace coal. Instead, retired coal plants are being replaced by even larger natural. In reality, annual coal power generation in the United States at least has declined by about half, over 1 trillion kilowatt hours in the past 10 years. And it's true that natural gas has picked up about 2/3 of that slack, about 670 billion kilowatt hours, but growth in renewables has accounted for the other 1/3, 370 billion kilowatt hours. As a result, the power sector carbon emissions in the United United States fallen since 2008 and continued to decline steadily. In fact, electricity is a significant emissions reduction. It's true that not, and this was written after the huge spending mandates for green renewable energy that the United States undertook following the pandemic. But those will take years, decades to kick in and be realized. That trillions of dollars do not go away. It's true that natural gas is a fossil fuel. To reach zero emissions, it must be replaced by renewables with storage and smart grids. But thus far, the path to grid decarbonization in the U.S. has been a success story that the film somehow portrays as a failure. Moreover, the decarbonization could be accelerated through policies like pricing carbon pollution. Look, all of this, and we all do and should, after all, either as inhabitants of the planet in general, but particularly as traders and investors, we have to be well aware of this because the energy sector is enormous and it's transitioning right before our very eyes. So we've got to be on our toes about this. Carbon pricing, which is a sort of ass backwards way of saying pollution pricing. And you have a restaurant, for example, you have waste products, you have to pay to have it carted away. That's a cost of doing business. Or anything else, I don't know, if whatever it is, something, if you I don't know, if you any office, ordinary office that but whatever, everybody generates waste and generally have to pay for it, to have it removed. So pricing of carbon is something that many economists have been advocating for decades. However, there's no denying the uncomfortable truth that our more popular solutions may not be as green, sustainable, or renewable as we might have hoped either. Solar panels and windmills dominate the clean energy scene and are actually doing much harm to the environment, and more harm to the environment. It's not the solution to climate change, and it never was. It does not have the strength to ever completely replace fossil fuels, but nuclear energy does. Now look, let's just take a small break here and try to just give you a sense of a perspective. It's a modest 20-story office building, not so big, but the entire roof is really air conditioning / heating system. And I can only imagine how much juice it takes. But to put that into perspective, if we were to produce enough power from a photovoltaic array to power a toaster, like every kitchen toaster, 2,400-watt toaster, we'd need about 10 square yards of photovoltaic cells just to power the toaster. Oh, that's about 3 square meters. Excuse me, I had my numbers. About 3 square meters, 3 square yards of photovoltaic cells just to power the toaster. Okay, we're not talking about the air conditioning system of my building, which would probably require, I don't know, they'd have to plaster over the entire city just to power the air conditioning system in one building. And that's great in the sun when it's cloudy. It's a hot day and it's raining. No sun and it's hot. And it's screwed. So it's not feasible. And anyway, until we ever get to anything resembling battery storage for these alternative fuels, it's useless to begin with. The intermittency problem would be largely addressed, but we're so far away from any rational battery technology that it's just not practical. The environmental damage of producing and disposing of lithium. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. 2019, 65% of Germany's energy was powered by renewable energy sources, and 48% of that came from wind turbines. Each wind turbine requires about 230 tons of steel, and steel making requires a very large amount of coal. As of numbers from 2016, if the world were to have 25% of its power come completely from wind turbines, we would need 450 million metric tons of steel and the fossil fuel equivalent of 600 million metric tons of coal. Moreover, all of the electricity that wind turbines produce is intermittent, we mentioned that, while its production, installation, and maintenance all rely heavily on fossil fuels. No getting around that, ladies and gentlemen. Truth is the truth. It goes into the footing of one of these 100-meter wind monsters. Hundreds of cubic meters, cubic meters of concrete up there poured into the 800 tons of steel that go into the footing. It's unbelievable. Most solar panels today are made from quartz, which has to be mined before going through an extensive heating process fueled by coal, just like steel, then turned into a pure form called polysilicon. This generates up to 4 tons of tetrachloride waste for every 1 ton of polysilicon produced. Tetrachloride is a toxic chemical that, when introduced to water, can create the hydrochloric acid, the cause of acid rain, which is extremely dangerous to both humans and the environment. The inclusion of extremely toxic chemicals is found in almost every step of solar panels. Now, today, nearly half the world's photovoltaics are made in China, which has looser laws of the environment. The Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition has been tracking the environmental impacts of the industry since 1982. While it was created to have more transparency in the production industry, it seems to have done the opposite, as it allows companies to self-report the amounts of toxins and waste that are expelled. According to the coalition, the number of companies willing to provide these numbers has been declining, especially among generic brand companies from China. A study released in 2014 by Northwestern University and Argonne National Laboratory found that the carbon footprint of a solar panel made in China is twice that of one made in Europe, due to looser environmental restrictions and more coal-fired power plants. Not my mistake. So what's the answer? While still being able to continue our electrically powered, it seems that the solution is nuclear. The only type of energy with an entirely containable emission. Solar farms require about 17 times more material than nuclear power plants do. And nuclear produces 4 times less carbon emissions than solar panels do. The shift from matter-dense and intermittent fuel, that means such as fossil fuels, as meaning matter, that's why there's so much energy packed into them. And solar and wind to an energy-dense fuel like nuclear. A few of those pellets can create tremendous amounts of energy. Is what our climate needs to heal, coupled with less consumption. In the long run, it is much cheaper, uses less resources, and expels less waste into the environment. The most shocking part of all this is the physics, and this is going to really blow you away when it comes to. We'll talk about this as much as, but well, this is just fascinating. The physics of green energy solutions is that we're being sold do not actually have the energy to able to ever completely replace fossil fuels. The physics boundary, that means the limit, the silicon photovoltaic panels, that means how much they can actually produce. The Shockley quasar limit is a maximum conversion of photons into electrons. That means 34% of the sunlight that hits these photovoltaic cells, a maximum, can be turned into electrons. The best commercial technology today exceeds 26%. Almost there. 8 more percent, and we're at the maximum, the physical limit of how much how efficient these things can be. Wind power technology also has flaws in physics. The boundary, again, the limit for wind turbines, called the Betz limit, is a maximum capture of 60% of kinetic energy in moving air. Commercial turbines today exceed 40%. So they're almost there too. But nuclear power ends up being more reliable when it comes to generating power consistently, completely and efficiently replace fossil fuels while reducing. We have to give up on the air conditioning. We don't have to give up on the ice making refrigerators or the Ford 350s to take. We've been living in a world that hasn't put the climate or environment first in hundreds of years. So clean energy that is actually clean, not just branded as such for profit. And that's what we're going to get to when we take a look at some of the stocks we can actually trade. And we'll get to that in a few moments. I'm sorry for the unusual length. We're coming in on 25 minutes here, but you get the idea. There's a lot to get your head around here. Soon enough, deserts will be covered in solar panels instead of cacti, and tops of mountains with wind turbines instead of trees. We need to change now. We need change now that is effective almost immediately, not plans to switch to green energy by 2030, which is too late. The issue of intermittence, that's with the sun and the clouds and the solar and all that business, seems to constantly come up when dealing with, quote, green energy. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. This means that for solar panels and wind turbines to work, they need to be installed en masse. And I've seen plans. I've done a lot of research for this. I've seen plans where, like, tremendous amounts of the Sahara Desert are covered in these things. And they lose so much power in transmission because they have to ship it over to Europe. That's where it would theoretically be the demand. And most of it's lost in transmission. By the way, a great deal of energy is lost in transmission for hydro. It's manageable. But there aren't so many of these giant desert plants, and a lot of it is going to be lost in transmission because they take up so much land and they need so much sun, and they're not sun available in Europe. Biome in our biosphere, plants and animals that are no longer able to inhabit the area and are forced to move to or die. Evenpaw, one of California's biggest solar farms, takes 450 times more land than California's largest nuclear plant, the Diablo Canyon plant, to produce the same amount of energy. 400 times more land. Michael Schellenberger, an American author and environmental activist, puts it best. He says, in an effort to try to save the climate, are we destroying our environment? Another important development we seek is to impose carbon pricing into the economics of our society. Currently, the cost of pollution for any single polluter is zero. The environment functions as an open-air sewer for all environmentally damaging greenhouse gas effluents. Not long ago, the same was true for much of the developed world's water resources. Where I grew up, I used to go fishing as a young kid and catch mutant fish because the river through the city in which I grew up flowed had been bringing heavy metal in industrial England for centuries. It was filthy and disgusting. But that was addressed with the Clean Air and the Clean Water Act, and now I've heard that trout are incredible to me, but I've heard it. I know it to be true. That was until these nations decided to clean up their respective hydro acts and legislated and enforced the safe disposal of toxins into their water systems of their environments. The same was true of landfill disposals of solid waste. A similar phenomenon must take place with respect to the airborne environment. Unless and until the true, or at least a truer cost for polluting the atmosphere is reached, boosting in our own CO2 discharges. Choice is not complicated. We can pay the cost of air travel, including CO2 mitigation, which will raise the cost to realistic levels, or we continue to fly around at cheap fares and simply hope that the greenhouse effect magically disappears. Now, here are some of the stocks we can trade, and this from the event. I mean, let me just give you a textual one so we can take a look. We're going to look at Iberdrola, the largest electricity company in the world. It produces from hydro, wind, natural gas, and nuclear. The largest wind farmer in the world. She operates in Spain, the UK, Brazil, and the US. We can buy Iberdrola. It's a great buy. Schneider Electric is an industrial power supplier to commerce and industrial users. Low power and high power installations worldwide. EDF, Électricité de France, the world's largest nuclear fleet of electric generators. France, as you're probably well aware, generates 85% of its power from nuclear plants. So this outfit is the recognized leader in the business. RWE is a multi-source electricity provider using coal, natural gas, and operates in the UK, Holland, Turkey, and the US. Nordex is the German wind electric generator based throughout the EU. Nordex is responsible for most of those onshore, offshore, mountaintop, you name it. Nordex is got its finger in it somehow or other. And of course, E.ON, which is the Euro land-wide electricity provider. E.ON is into grids, smart grids, metering, reverse metering, which is what facilitates alternative energy power or renewable energy are being put back into the grid. In other words, the system previously has just been designed to bill for power that was removed from the grid by the customers. It was never designed to bill the electric company for energy provided by the customers, which isn't precisely what it needs to do. Hence smart. And we're going to talk about First Solar. We'll take a look at this guy. Let's go back in a minute. Actually, let's go to the real-time chart. Let me hold on for 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll take some questions in the meantime. Ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Okay. Here. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Obviously, working on the MT4 platform. Things broken down in my different profiles. Program organizing, graphically organizing a chart. Here we have the stocks we have. Veolia, wind turbine mechanical. We talked about. First Solar. First Solar is because these are the guys that may hit 22nd when things were turning down, by the way, in the general economy. By all of 2022, from the beginning of January, I should say August, November, whatever you want to date the beginning of the slide down in post-pandemic recovery into what turned into 2022, which was a significantly bad year for investors and traders around the world. Those that own First Solar did very nicely. Thank you very much. From July 22nd until today, they're doing First Solar. These guys make the metering systems. The meters, they're the ones who do the meters. They balance power. You know, if you take an industrial installation that has a big roof, sometimes they're going to draw power. They generate power. They may be sending power back at the same time they draw, but who knows? These guys, the technology that enables the billing, and not only the of that kind of juice, but of the billing and accounting for Schneider Electric. Again, you get a great picture of these companies. This is again doing very nicely from 109 to 148. Jump, Schneider Electric. Let's see. Saint-Gobain, I don't think has been doing so well. I could be no. Daily chart. Saint-Gobain is they make the photovoltaic glass. In other words, we talked about the photovoltaic. That's a certain type of material, but they're covered in glass, highly absorbent, ultraviolet absorbent, or I think it's UV absorbent glass, and zinc. So there you go. That alternative energy business. Boozy group. Take a look at this. These guys. This is next couple of days, can lead this. But again, when things turn bad, things are pretty bad. Here we go. This is when things turn bad. But they start to turn for alternative energy. And Heidelberg makes concrete and aggregates, and the amount of concrete and not only for wind turbines, which is tremendous. Those huge masted monsters require significant anchoring to fall over, and they do fall over now and then. And Heidelberg also is one of the leaders, as is Boozy as well, in making cement is an extremely polluting enterprise. So what is cement? Cement is burnt limestone. In order to make cement, you literally burn crush it into fine powder and burn it in an oven, high temperature oven. I might add, that's probably heated with hydrocarbon to make it natural gas or whatever they use. So they are leaders in making concrete with a lower carbon footprint. Lavish also, I believe. October 22 today. All Ibertola. Better try. No, here we go. This is Ibertola from site. So yeah, these are great stocks to buy and own, ladies and gentlemen. Really, really good stocks to buy and own. Yeah, that's going to do it for today. Oh, and let me just say one more thing. I do want to go. Yes, we have to be concerned in general as well. These are energy stocks, mostly hydrocarbon stocks, and these. Well, this is the wind. EDF is listed here. Jump up. This by the way, this anomaly. While we're bullish on this, excuse me, it did undergo a bizarre phenomena. Oh yeah, here it is. And yeah, what it is, the French government nationalizes EDF, essentially taking all of its shares off the market, and you can see there's very low price because of the energy crisis due to and we'll see this right to the Ukraine war. But again, it doesn't mean you can still buy it. It's obviously become much more expensive, but it's going down. EDF is a good stock. Of course, Aramco's been going great guns because the price of oil has been going up and demand. It's down since we thought. I'll take a look at Exxon and Chevron. Ran from a high of 46 to about 31. Excuse me. No, 26th of February. That's right. Yeah, no, Aramco's okay. It's not down. Mobile, okay. I rest my case. They're doing fabulously well. Take a look at it. They're all similar. You'll see also. Get my drift. All pretty well. And like continue to do so as well. Total, again, since September of 2020, when a month, Eon, ladies and gentlemen, I'll open the floor to some questions, and if there are none, we'll feel free, ask anything you like, ladies and gentlemen. White group tonight. Oh, here's a question from Barbara. How can you tell if companies are really green or not? Well, I'll tell you the short answer is don't rely on tips. I've researched I know what's going on, and that's for two reasons. One, you should never trust any tip or anything that Reagan used to say about when he was dealing with Gorbachev. Trust but verify. I love that statement. Trust but verify. Trust but not so much. So do your own homework. That's one thing, Barbara. And once you do, and I don't mean to make it sound like you need a PhD and you have to go into the bowels of the library, grocer, back issues of Progressive Grocer. No, I mean that you just have to go to we live in the Star or Reuters or any, plenty of free sites, do enough research to know exactly what these guys are up to. They're publicly traded, publicly available about what they're up to. Dilip asks, which is the best in any I say Reuters, investing.com is all of course, Yahoo Finance. But in terms of checking out stocks, Reuters and Zacks also is good. ZACKS.com. Yeah, there's plenty of them. Plenty of them. I hope I answered your question. All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for the questions for now. So let me say that staff and the management here at FXO, I'm your host, Seth Julian, wishing you all, ladies and gentlemen, the ability to trade with confidence. Bye-bye for now. Jose, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's my pleasure, Barbara. Thank you, too. Oh, Sibusisu, good to see you again. Always good to have you in the room. My pleasure. Thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you in the room. Okay, bye-bye, folks. See you next week.